Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We are live from the Fox 13 newsroom this afternoon, continuing our coverage of a pretty sticky situation. If you were in downtown Salt Lake City last night, what was once believed to be a crane at about 9:03 last night when we were on the air became a drill rig after some further clarification. Look at these photos from last night in downtown Salt Lake. Salt Lake City Fire got on scene pretty quick. This was around 200 South State Street, just after 9 o'clock. Construction work in the area. This drill rig collapsed in downtown Salt Lake onto two parked vehicles. Scary scene. Lucky it wasn't a busy Friday or Saturday night in downtown Salt Lake. Could have been much worse. Brian Schnee with you, investigative reporter Nate Carlisle here. Nate, I wanted to ask you about a video that you were able to obtain earlier today. It shows the first time we were able to really look at this play out in real time. What does the video show us?
You see the operator moving the drill rig forward, and then he's backing it up, and he tries to move forward one more time, and he's moving in kind of a diagonal direction, and that's when the rig tips over. And you can see why firefighters at first thought this was a crane, because it's got that kind of rear diagonal boom. So it probably did look like a crane to firefighters out there in the dark in the 9:30 at night or so. Okay, so now it's backing up, and now watch this as it starts moving kind of forward and diagonal, and there she goes.
You can see in the distance, everybody in a panic in the distance. The guys closest to us don't really move much. There's not much reaction. But the folks on the far end of that screen in the corner, they got out of there real quick. They could tell this thing was going down.
Well, yeah, the guys closest to the camera there didn't have much to worry about, personally at least. They're not in the direction the thing's falling. And yeah, if you're on the opposite side, anywhere in the direction that drill rig was starting to tip, you're running just to get out of there, because you don't know precisely where it's going to fall and what kind of debris or basically shrapnel might go with it.
I think the big takeaway here, minimal injuries given the circumstance. One guy was taken away, was the operator of the crane, fell about 20 feet. They called them critical injuries. I don't believe we received an update, I guess, at this point. It was listed at good condition afterwards. So critical and then upgraded given the circumstances. But Nate, you're working on a piece tonight for Fox 13 News at 5. What are you focusing on with this?
We're going to talk a little bit about who regulates these machines. They're regulated differently than, say, cranes are, which is why it's an important distinction between a drill rig and a crane. And also looked a little bit at the data on construction injuries in Utah. There's so much construction around the state. We wondered, or is the work site getting more or less dangerous?
I mean, the video is just remarkable to see this perspective. Obviously, the first time we've really gotten to see this, we saw the aftermath. I mean, every bit of news coverage was out there right at about 9:05 last night. Everyone hurried to the scene. When you were hearing that a crane tipped over in downtown Salt Lake, Nate, you're no stranger to this area. You've been a media member here for quite some time in this area. When you're hearing about development in Salt Lake City, a crane toppling over and smashing into cars, what are you thinking about before you even see this video?
My brain kind of works differently than most other people's. I've been a journalist for so long, but I'm immediately thinking about, regulations, was this thing inspected? And what are the requirements to be operating what we thought at the time was a crane? Again, we turned out to be a drill rig. But I'm also wondering, again, is this a factor of how much construction there is in Salt Lake City? And honestly, data doesn't necessarily bear that out. But I'm also thinking about my dad. Honestly, he was in an ironworkers union for 35 years, so he worked around machinery like this, and he's got some stories. Luckily, he always avoided serious injury, but you can see how bad this could have been if there'd been anyone more directly underneath the drill rig.
Well, checking in on some of our comments, we're live on Facebook right now. Some folks kind of giving a little play-by-play as they saw it. Andrew saying they were waving people away, those workers in the distance running and probably shouting, hey, get the heck out of here if you're around. I think it's amazing that nobody else was hurt given those vehicles were parked, nobody in those cars. Whitney says, I pray the operator recovers, comes out from all of this. Thank God there were not more serious injuries. And again, the update that we received is that the person operating this drill rig is in good condition. So that's about as good as it can get. Nate, I know that the development in downtown Salt Lake City, probably since you've been a journalist in this area, has just skyrocketed. They were actually working on Astra Tower, 39 stories, 400-foot skyscraper luxury apartment building, just one of many in downtown Salt Lake City. As a journalist, does this intrigue you to look into more of the development going on downtown and making sure something else like this doesn't happen?
Well, not necessarily development as much as, how safe these job sites are and who's watching out for these workers and things like that. Here probably 10, 15 years ago, there was a reporter at the Las Vegas Sun that won a Pulitzer Prize investigating all the fatal accidents for construction of casinos on the Strip. And that was, it's been kind of a guidepost ever since for reporters wanting to take a look at the construction industry. And I've done a little work during the pandemic on, OSHA inspections and health and safety inspections for workers, and how many of them were getting sick in some cases during the pandemic, especially up at, say, the meatpacking plants up in Cache County. So worker safety's kind of intrigued me anyway, and I do feel a little more inspired to dig into that again after seeing this video.
I know you touched on it for a sec, but just in our comment section, what's going to happen with OSHA? Any insight on that?
Well, they're going to investigate what happened, and what that investigation finds will kind of determine whether anyone gets fined and who gets fined. Jacobson Construction is the general contractor, and some of the info we've not gotten today is who is the subcontractor responsible for this.
And it looks like we did. I was just looking too. I believe we just got that information. Morris Shea Bridge Company was the subcontractor for the drill rig operator. But yes, at the beginning, all eyes were on Jacobson for this large project, right?
Yeah, I mean the way it works is you get a general contractor, and then they hire subcontractors based on what the job requires. A general contractor like Jacobson probably wouldn't have its own drill rig and operators to operate it, so they hire that out.
Well, obviously the video speaks for itself. This is the first time we got a really good glimpse of what happened. We saw the aftermath. So thank you not only for sharing your perspective on this, Nate, and for diving into it, but for obtaining this video, because until you shared it, I hadn't seen it. So I think a lot of people were curious, how does this thing tip over? It shows the movement, and it's going to come up right about here. You'll notice the weight shift, and off it goes. And rarely do we see how this plays out on camera unless you've got a vantage point quite like this one.
Yeah, and you can see too, it looks like there's legs up in the front that would come down, and those were elevated. And so when the drill rig moves forward, it doesn't really have anything to catch it or catch the weight. And that's just an amateur's perspective there. We've not had time to run this past a true professional that would be able to tell us what he or she sees.
Well, again, thanks to everybody for watching. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for your questions. And of course, your concern regarding the injury. And thank you, Nate, for joining me to have this discussion real quick, because the video is quite remarkable. This was downtown Salt Lake City last night. For everybody who just missed it, maybe you slept through it, but I'm sure it made quite the sound when it came down.
Yeah, this was, if everyone remembers where the old Carl Jr.'s was at 200 South State Street, that's this corner. We're putting high rises now.
Yeah, and then obviously that's the theme a lot of people are seeing all across the downtown area. And again, we'll leave you with a picture here of the aftermath. Again, those vehicles you see there, nobody in those vehicles, which was probably the best news that we could come away with this. They both just got crushed by this drill rig. Again, look for our coverage coming up tonight on Fox 13 News at 4, 5, and 9 o'clock. Nate's coverage will be a part of our 5 o'clock newscast, so hope you will join us then. Nate, thank you for the time, and thank you, everybody, for joining us on this Facebook Live. Remember, you can always go back and watch this, leave your comments there, as well as going on our website. We've got multiple pieces of coverage about this story on there now, including this video. If you'd like to share it around, hey, look what happened in downtown Salt Lake City last night. Not something you see every day. Nate, thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Brian.